So I'm going to talk about what a couple of dots can tell us about our body and our minds. So here, what is really shown is just a couple of dots that are moving, but you already associate it with a walking person. And not only do you associate it with a walking person, you might also be thinking about who this person is, if it's a man or a woman, and what their mood is. So right now it's walking kind of happily. And so that's pretty amazing about what our brains can do. But also our bodies are pretty cool because they contain this information. So let me ask you a quick question. Who of you has been able to recognize a family member or a friend or even their favorite athlete just from seeing them walking around? Right. This happens to every one of us, right? So that means that our bodies somehow, or our movements somehow contain a lot of information about who we are. So now what we would like to do is use this information to our advantage. And for example, use it to diagnose diseases and their severity. And this is obviously something you can do with like if someone sprained their ankle, you can see that they're not able to walk anymore. But we also would like to use this for things that are not as obvious. So for example, for this person, what we like to say is she's a woman, she's around 50 years old, she has an active lifestyle, and generally she's healthy. And not only do we want to talk about now, we would also like to talk about the future. So say she would ever get into a bad accident and would lose a limb, can we also already predict, well, how would she walk with a prosthesis? Such that should this ever happen, we're able to help her as best as possible. So now, so one thing what this research is based on is the fact that we all move in a very similar way, which is a bit of a contradiction to what I just said. Because we are all able to recognize our family and friends, but at the same time, we all also walk in a very similar way. And the reason that we do this is because we are basically all a bit lazy. So when our brain tells us to move, our brain tells us to do so in a way that is as energy efficient as possible. And this is not really the only thing that we care about. We might also want to, well, obviously we do not want to fall, so we care about stability. And also we want to keep our head steady so we can actually use our vision system. And so combining all of these different goals, we put them together and out comes this walking motion. But how come that when we do something very similar, we still end up with different movements? And the reason for that is that we are all very different. Even though our bodies are somewhat similar, our skeleton differs between men and women, and also some people have more muscles while others have some more fat tissue. And so basically, based on our life experiences, we all end up with a different body. And with that body, we then try to move as energy efficient as possible while keeping our head still and keeping stable. And even here, there are some differences. For example, someone who's older might really not want to fall, whereas for someone younger, this is not as bad. So for them, it could be that they still care about balance and energy efficiency, but in their case, the balance becomes a bit more important, and so they might spend a little bit more energy to not fall. So now, how can we use this information to our advantage? So really what we would like to do is extract from our different body types and our movement goals, and based on that to be able to predict how people would walk. Because if we do that, we can use it to diagnose diseases or, for example, make these predictions. And so this is quite challenging. Because what we cannot do is just chop someone's leg off, measure it, and put it back. You might get into some issues with our ethics colleague. So we won't do that. We also do not yet have any radar-based or other device that we can connect to our brains and tell us how much do we care about stability or how much do we care about being energy efficient. So we do not have that. But what do we have? Well, what we have is actually the measurements of movement, which we can already take with the markers and hopefully also soon with our newly developed sensors. And so if indeed differences in our movements come from these differences in our bodies and differences in our movement goals, what we can do is reverse this relationship, measure how people walk, and based on that extract their movement goals and their body type. So such that one day we can tell you something about your body and your mind just based on these couple of dots. Thank you.